Hey all, welcome to the Redzone Rodeo. I am your co-host Carson, and I'm here with Rob, and we will be bringing to you another episode, talking all kinds of football, but we're going to be focusing a lot on the UFL tonight because, Rob, what is coming up next weekend?
It is UFL kickoff. I am so excited. My Renegades versus the Birmingham Stallions kicking off all the UFL action. It is beyond exciting.
I know, I cannot wait. My Houston Roughnecks will be going up against the Memphis Showboats, and they'll actually be playing at home in Rice Stadium. So really looking forward to the home opener. Sad I'm not going to be able to be there in person, but I'm super excited to see the game, see how they all unfold. It's just so amazing that this new league is starting up again, and it's going to be just as fun as the XFL last year and the USFL the last 2 years. So I am super excited, super excited. Although I do have some concerns as kind of like a Roughnecks fan, and I'm sure you've probably heard, but Mark Thompson, my running back, my guy out of Florida, unfortunately, it seems like in the past couple weeks, and I think he actually injured himself against Arlington on Arlington's field because he is great on Twitter. If any of y'all haven't checked out his Twitter, in Mark We Trust, great stuff. But he unfortunately has suffered a injury, a knee sprain is what it looks to be. But he tweeted out that he hates the Arlington practice fields, which is where my guess is where he might have tweaked that knee. Unfortunately, we do not know. Well, I guess it's fortunately, but unfortunately, we don't know how long he's going to be out for the injury. But when he does come back, hopefully it's in time for when the Roughnecks play the Renegades so that we can run the ball down your throat, Rob. So,
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Renegades have, I think, the best defense in the entire league right now. So I'd be surprised to see anyone run the ball down our throats. Never mind the Roughnecks. I mean, I don't even know who they have on their offensive line. How are you going to block for Mark Thompson when he gets back?
with everybody that we assigned, the Roughnecks went out and signed everybody, offensive line and defensive line. That was like our first main people who we picked up. We were like, we don't need a quarterback. We got a running back, and we built in the trenches. That's a successful team, Rob, building in the trenches, okay? As a Titans fan, I know that you build in the trenches and you just let your running back just run the ball, and that's it. That's your style of football, and that's going to be how you win. So,
He's good like that.
yeah, exactly. So Mark Thompson's pretty much Derrick Henry of the UFL.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I think his Twitter is even better than his football skills. But I'm impressed by both of them. I don't know who the Roughnecks have on offense now that Mark Thompson's going to be out for a little while. I don't know who's going to be getting the ball. How you guys are going to move the ball at all or score
Well,
points?
so recently, Jarrett Guarantano, I think is how you pronounce his last name. So there's been a three kind of quarterback battle happening in these various days of training camps and practices, and of course the roster cuts that have happened and whatnot. And so Reed Sinnett and Nolan Henderson, along with Jarrett Guarantano, have been kind of all battling for the starting role. But it was actually recently announced that Guarantano is going to be our starting QB. But I thought it was very interesting because our head coach, Curtis Johnson, in an interview, he ended up saying that whoever the backup is, we're going to play him too during that game. So I'm honestly convinced we're going to probably see all three guys out there in this first game to kind of see who the quarterback's going to be, which is a bit scary. I have to say it is a bit scary. And that's the only position on offense that I'm really worried about, because wide receivers, we have some really great guys. And I think that, outstanding players that played last year for the Houston Gamblers, they're going to be coming back and doing some great stuff. My just concern is who's going to be throwing them the ball. And I absolutely hope that Guarantano goes out there and he just chucks it, and he's the guy. He's the guy they're going to go forward with. But I mean, as we discussed on a previous episode of this, uh, these guys don't have a lot of spring experience. And so, you can look at what they've done in college, which is most of the time good. but we know that college and the NFL and the UFL are all different. So it's going to be interesting. What I think is going to be even crazier, though, is our defense. Houston's defense, I think, is going to be the number one in the league. All of the pass rushers, linebackers. I mean, Reuben Thompson, Chris Odom. How are you going to stop all those guys? I just want to know, and I don't think any team really can. So I think they're going to be nasty on the defensive line. So get ready for quarterback hits because that's what Houston's going to be bringing to the table.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think the Roughnecks are going to have a stellar defense this year. But again, the concern with them, I think, is what you just mentioned, is the quarterback side of things. We were both New Jersey Generals fans, so we both know that having a rotating cast of quarterbacks is never, ever, ever a good thing. I forget who said this famously, but there's a famous NFL saying that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks at all.
Yep.
You need to have just one guy that you can stick with throughout the season, and if there's a rotation at that position, you have a problem at that position. For my Renegades, even, I'm a little worried about what's going to happen with Luis Perez and Lindsey Scott because the Renegades have come out and declared, Luis Perez is our guy. He won us a championship last year. He'll be the starter this year. But that doesn't erase the fact that they just went and drafted a quarterback at the number one spot in the draft. Not only did
Yeah.
they draft him there, they traded for that spot. They acquired it somehow. The details of that trade are still unknown, but they went out of their way to get that number one pick and then use it to acquire Lindsey Scott Jr. So why did you go through all that trouble to get a quarterback if we're never even going to see him on the field? He has to get on the field at some point this season. And I'm starting to think that they might be leaning towards a quarterback rotation where they have, Luis Perez is the guy that kind of like draw back in the pocket and throws it a little bit. And then you give it to Lindsey Scott Jr., who definitely has the ability to run the football a little bit more, kind of like what the DC Defenders did, what the Birmingham Stallions have done in the past. All those teams have had that quarterback duo where there's like a guy who throws it from the pocket and a guy who can scramble and throw it on the run and that sort of thing. And I would not be surprised at all if the Renegades did something similar to that with Luis Perez and Lindsey Scott Jr. this year. As much as I hope that that's not the case, because as much as I love both of those quarterbacks, like I said, I think a team is most efficiently run when it's just one guy under center.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, as New Jersey Generals fans previously, we saw when it was Luis Perez as the thrower and DeAndre Johnson as the runner. And so maybe the Renegades are kind of looking back at some of Perez's like past film and seeing like, oh, well, he was really good doing this. So maybe they are setting themselves up for this kind of, I wouldn't say a dual quarterback system, but a quarterback system where you could have multiple guys that achieve different kinds of success on the field and maybe being versatile. Maybe that, I know the saying is like maybe having two quarterbacks, you have none at all. But maybe things are shifting in a way, and maybe a certain quarterback is, in terms of his skills, is better in certain situations against different teams than they are playing everybody. So that might be something interesting that the UFL kind of employs. But I mean, I feel like it's the case even with the NFL, especially when you have a team that has not a like a day one starter, like this is our guy. And there's still like problems in regards to, okay, well, who's going to actually get that start? Um, I think we're going to see actually a lot of quarterbacks that will be getting snaps in these first couple games, even if they are not the starting quarterback. Maybe the only one that I could think of that, mm, but actually two, I'd probably go with like AJ McCarron on the Battlehawks. I bet he's going to be probably rocking the entire game, and probably Case Cookus on the Showboats too. I think those are solid locks with those two guys.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way AJ McCarron is going to get pulled off the field. He's by far, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the UFL right now. So I don't know why you'd ever want to take him off the field for someone that's just not as good as he is.
Yeah,
Although I know that the Battlehawks do have another good quarterback on their roster. The name is, slipping or, eluding me right now, but
they
they
have.
do have someone else
Yeah,
that's
they
on.
have. I was gonna
uh,
say they have Brandon Silvers. He was the Roughnecks guy last year, and he did pretty well. I wouldn't say he was like anything crazy good, but absolutely, McCarron definitely has depth in regards to the quarterback room.
Yeah, yeah, because the thing is, they're both like the same style of quarterback where they're like sitting in the pocket and throwing it. So in that situation, I think Silvers is just like really good depth, like you said, for McCarron. And then, Case Cook is, I don't even know who would be behind him that could challenge him for snaps as the starting quarterback on the team. So definitely those two are set in stone. The Renegade situation, it kind of reminds me of the Baltimore Ravens when they still had Joe Flacco, but then they drafted Lamar Jackson. It's very
Mhm.
similar, right? You have like an older pocket quarterback who's won you a championship in the past, but then you go out and spend one of your first round picks on, a younger, mobile quarterback, really exciting, really dynamic. And that entire first year, Lamar's rookie year, he was basically just being used as like a gadget player. Like they put him in for like trick plays at the quarterback spot where Joe Flacco would line up as a wide receiver. Sometimes they'd even line Lamar up at wide receiver and have him go out there and run routes.
Yeah.
So I would love it if the Renegades kind of had like a transition here where this is like Luis Perez's Joe Flacco year. He's kind of getting up there in age. So maybe, you have him for 1 or 2 more years as like your quarterback, established QB1. But you work in Lindsey Scott to the offense, either in gadget plays or like we talked about, maybe a little bit of that two quarterback system. But I think the best way to do it is to have the stability of Luis Perez as your main guy most of the time, and then just kind of work in like, a little bit of something with Lindsey Scott, the way that the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson when he was a rookie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That could be really good. And I honestly think when the Renegades did take him, I know there was those questions about like Luis Perez and will he come back? Is he going to be the starter? Stuff like that. As much I love Luis Perez. We both do. We both have grown watching him play for the Jersey Generals, for the Vegas Vipers, and there was when he was never like, oh, a certainty. I always believed he was going to be that starter anyways, just because it's like he's the right guy for the job. Not only is like a motivator of his players around him, but he's a leader on the field. And so I found it crazy the thought of like, oh, him not returning to the Renegades and returning to playing. But absolutely, I will agree with you. I think that the Lindsey Scott acquisition, it's probably not for now. It's for the future. And holding on to this guy that, he's a top prospect in the league. Um, he obviously a lot younger too. He can be the guy that you build around for the future. Um, Depending on how long Luis Perez stays, in the league, and whatnot. So absolutely, I could 100% see that playing out in favor for the Renegades. So, I hope the Roughnecks can get a quarterback like that because, up until this point, these guys, I'm not big on any of them. So, hopefully that they can prove me wrong on the field. But if not, then I honestly don't even know who else would be out there, or even if the Roughnecks could even trade, because you have a really good defense and you have a really good wide receiver room. And I know Mark Thompson's down with an injury right now, but when he gets back up, the offense could be firing all cylinders. And I feel like the quarterback position is just holding them back. And so I hope, I don't know what's going to happen, but if that seems to be the issue, I hope they can go out and get somebody. I know there's not really big names out there. Maybe Brian Scott the third, Aaron Rodgers of Division 3, maybe. No, I'm kidding.
In
I don't want.
Canada,
Yeah, no, he's playing in Canada, um, but yeah, I hope that they can explore those options if these three guys don't end up working out. So.
what about Zach Wilson? Doesn't seem like anyone in the NFL wants him right now.
I honestly like that's something that I wanted to talk about too, is this whole like notion of like with the UFL, like of course progressing into what it is now. And I only see the best for the league. I don't think it's gonna die. I don't think it's gonna take 2 seasons and whatnot. I really think that this league is going to be not a minor league, kind of like baseball or whatnot, but it absolutely can be a place for players who were really good in college, want to continue their careers, maybe can't make the cut in the NFL, or maybe they just need a stepping stone to get to the NFL because college to NFL is a big jump. So this could be that stepping stone for these players. And then like the question comes is like all these quarterbacks that get drafted super high in the drafts, not all of them make it. And I know last episode we even talked about, the 2021 and the 2022 quarterback draft classes and some of those guys who are now backup quarterbacks or aren't even in the league. What if it could be kind of not necessarily like this is the only way, but quarterbacks going out of college that are top prospects, they may spend a year or two in the UFL before going to the NFL. Like that could be such a great like transition for them for each level of football. And it might even help with teams in the NFL knowing who they're going to be getting based on their play in a professional like setting. That might not be the NFL, but it's still up there. It's better than college. It's higher levels. So we could absolutely even see that. And I would 100% love if Zach Wilson came to the Houston Roughnecks. I think that he would be a great acquisition. I think some of those quarterbacks, even in the NFL that aren't quite making it, would be really good in the UFL.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be good for the top quarterback prospects. Like, I don't know if Caleb Williams would want to go
Oh
play in the.
yeah.
But
No.
you talk about a guy like Quinn Ewers or someone like that who had like a really promising year or two in college, but then kind of fell off the map, and they kind of want to reestablish themselves a little bit. I think that would be a great stepping stone. If the UFL could kind of be like integrated into the NFL as like a farming system,
Yeah.
where these draft prospects can go prove themselves for a little bit, or you could have guys who didn't work out in the NFL but are still young and full of potential, kind of like a Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or someone like that, go and develop a little bit more, just kind of fine tune themselves a little bit. I think that would be a brilliant idea. I would love to see that happen. I think that'd be so exciting because then you'd have another football league filled with young NFL caliber talent, players going at it and competing for like a spot in the NFL. There's like so much on the line, so much drama, so much excitement. That would just make I feel like UFL even better, even more watchable. You'd have an even better product overall.
Yeah. And for even me personally, I would think like I think even of like Malik Willis, who was this high draft prospect out of Liberty, obviously went in the third round to us. But, if he had spent a couple years maybe in the UFL, what could that have done for his learning curve, for his career? Because he was just kind of thrown in and he hasn't been able to make it. So absolutely. I think that I hope the NFL and the UFL are thinking about some of these things because I think that there could be some really great partnerships that they could end up doing. And even if nothing happens on like a major basis, it would be really cool to have young players that still want to play the game and still want to have it be part of their kind of career, having have a space and a league to do that. Because, as The Rock has always said he was the 54th man. That is a real thing. Not everybody makes these 53-man rosters. And so for those who have made their entire life dedicated to the sport, um, rather than shutting that door and slamming it, is like, oh, you're done. Tough. Maybe you'll get picked up somewhere else. Now it's like there's other opportunities for you. You may not be making all the money that you might have been making in the NFL, but you still get to be doing what you love and you still get paid a lot. So like there's still like those incentives. So um all in all, just yeah, such a great thing. And I'm so excited that, not only the both the leagues, combined, but it's right around the corner. This upcoming weekend will be kickoff. And that's crazy for me to think about. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I know we're talking a lot about the UFL right now because there's a ton of exciting stuff going on around it. But Carson, something happened in the NFL this past week that I know you are very excited about, and I cannot believe you haven't mentioned it yet. But
I
I figured
know.
you talk about it just a little bit here because I know you're
Uh
pretty hyped about it.
I am super psyched about it. And I got a little ahead of myself because I'm so ecstatic for the start of the UFL that I was like, oh my goodness, we have to launch and start talking about the UFL because it's literally days away until kickoff and we get to see all our teams in action. But I have one word for you, Rob, and that one word is Sneed. Are you ready for Sneed? Because L'Jarius Sneed is a Tennessee Titan, and I cannot believe that this actually happened. Um, as Rob mentioned, I am like so ecstatic. We went from having a really good kind of draft prospect in Roger McCreary at cornerback, but we had a terrible, terrible, terrible guy in Christian Fulton. And Titans fans, you know this. Last season, how many penalties did Christian Fulton have on him that gave us up these like stopped them on downs, whatnot. It was the most infuriating stuff watching Christian Fulton play. And what Rand Carthon has done is he has gone out and within free agency, not only did they grab L'Jarius Sneed, which is, I mean, I don't even have to talk about him. He's literally the guy, the playmaker on the Chiefs defense. Do you remember the game, Rob? When the Chiefs were playing the Ravens, who was the one that punched out the ball when Zay Flowers was trying to cross the goal line and stopped him from scoring? And countless other plays. Like I have been on a Snead high because I've just been watching highlights of him just wrecking people up. And I'm so psyched that he's going to be in our secondary with some of our other guys that are there right now. But in addition, we also got Cheeto. And I know that was someone that, Rob, you also really liked when he was with the Cowboys, I believe.
He was
Um,
drafted.
he was drafted by the Cowboys. Yeah. So he's, we have a pretty great trio with Roger McCreary, L'Jarius Sneed, and Cheeto. And so this secondary, which struggled last season with defending some of these top receivers, I don't think we're going to have that. And I honestly, like, I understand we're paying Snead a lot of money, but I think that he probably deserves that money. But to get him for a 2025 third round pick is a steal. And I know we swapped sevenths this round as well, but that's crazy to me that we were able to get him. So yeah, I am so stoked. Snead is a Titan. Our secondary just got 10 times better. And yeah, it's gonna be lit.
Yeah, no, I know you got a real need for Sneed over there, Sneed fiend. Like you're just
Yes.
over this move by the Titans. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, good for Tennessee. They went out and they got a good corner. He's had his injury history in the past, and I don't know if he's ever made a Pro Bowl before, but he was really good last year. He
I think
was the
so.
number one corner on the best defense in the league. He's proven his mettle when he's healthy. He can go out there and be that guy. And the Titans haven't had a guy like that, since Adoree Jackson was in his prime. That's been quite a few years now. So I think they might have overpaid him in terms of contract. 55 million guaranteed, 80 was it 87 million overall, something like that.
76.
76 million
Yeah.
over 4 years, close to 20 million a year. That is a lot of money. That makes him the highest paid corner or one of the highest paid corners in the league at almost 20 million a year. He's 27, so he'll be 31 when that contract ends. So that's a little much in my opinion, but they definitely went out and made a move that makes them better and more competitive this year, which I think is what every Titans fan was hoping for. At the end of the day, it was only at the cost of a third round pick. Um, you know, Same thing with Calvin Ridley. I feel like that's another move where it makes them better right now. Maybe in the
Hmm.
future there'll be some consequences for this move that might not be so pleasant, but right now it makes the Titans more competitive. And obviously, I'm ecstatic that my boy Chidobe Awuzie, second round pick in 2017 for the Cowboys, guy I absolutely loved his whole career with Dallas. Was so sad when he left us for Cincinnati to
Yep.
go be their number one corner. I'm super happy he's with the Titans and doing well for himself. Absolutely one of my favorite players that the Cowboys have had over the years, just like a great all around guy. So Titans are really developing that secondary, making their team better. I wish I could say the same about my Cowboys, who have not been making their team better. It has been really bad. I don't know, Carson, if you saw this, but Jerry Jones had an interview yesterday, and they asked him why the Cowboys didn't sign Tyron Smith to a deal like the Jets gave him, because it seems like relatively, a small deal. Six and a
Yeah.
half million dollars guaranteed for arguably one of the best left tackles in all of football is like an insane steal. And there's incentives on that deal that make it worth up to $20 million if Tyron Smith is healthy for the full season, if he balls out for the full season, all that sort of stuff. And Jerry Jones' response is the incentives would have been too much for the Cowboys cap to handle. Okay. Not even the base contract, but the incentives, which is $13.5 million. That was too much for you to pay to keep your Hall of Fame franchise defining, like elite all pro left tackle. That was too much 13.5 million in incentives that he would only get if he was healthy the whole season, if he played well the whole season. Oh, my heart, my heart. It is broken right now to hear Jerry Jones talk about that. On top of that, our starting, defensive tackle from last year, Jonathan Hankins, he signed with the Seahawks for a deal worth like $2 million. You wouldn't pay $2 million to keep one of our starting defensive linemen, who we don't really have a replacement for right now because Monty Smith is still developing. I mean, it's heartbreaking to watch all these players leave for, relative peanuts. And then Jerry Jones, to hear him be like, well, they're just too expensive. We can't afford to give $6.5 million to Tyron Smith. We can't afford to give $2 million to Jonathan Hankins. Where is all this money going? I know we have to pay Dak. I know we have to pay CD. I know we have to pay Micah. And those all three are going to be super, super, super expensive contracts, but they're not impacting the cap for this year. Even if you
Yeah.
were to extend all three of them right now, that would just result in more salary cap space. What are you saving these dollars for? What is this 8.5 million in cap space you save by not re-signing Tyrone Smith and Jonathan Hankins going to get you? What is it going to do for you that they would not have done? How are you going to spend it better than those two guys? And I don't think you are. Um, it's been beyond disappointing. To make up for Tyron Smith leaving, Jerry said that the Cowboys were planning on possibly switching Tyler Smith, the left guard who was originally drafted to be a left tackle, back to left tackle, which I think most Cowboys fans oppose because he has been an All-Pro. He was an All-Pro last year, first team All-Pro at left guard. So, if you have an All-Pro left guard, you don't really want to move him to another position. Hopefully the Cowboys get a left tackle in the draft and that doesn't have to happen. But yeah, just total failure in every capacity by Jerry Jones. The team is not doing so hot right now. Yeah, I'm just very sad.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I feel like this free agency, not only for my Titans and how many moves they made, but there was a lot of players out there that, and there still is. Like, don't get me wrong, there still is players out there, but that the Cowboys are just kind of sitting back and just, you know, not necessarily jumping in, maybe not even trying to fix one of the holes that, was an issue. It's definitely concerning for me as an overall fan of the sport and watching how it's all going to turn out. But I know for you, it has to absolutely just be digging the knife deeper into your back because it just is like, oh my goodness, like there's all these guys that are here that could instantaneously make our team better. And our front office and head coach and owner is basically telling me we don't need them. Those incentives, we that's too much money. We don't we nah. We're let them walk. Let them go to other teams. Um, yeah, that's not good.
No, no, Carson, it's not good. I don't even know how to, because like we watched the Cowboys get destroyed by the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs. It was
Yeah,
such a bad beating, it wasn't even funny. And Jerry Jones' response to that is to just let every good player we have that's a free agent this year walk for peanuts to other teams. What are you doing, Jerry? Why? That's not going to
yeah,
make us more competitive in the playoffs next year. That's going to make we might not even make the playoffs next year at this rate. Oh man. Oh, it's bad, Carson. And another thing that I just thought was an interesting tidbit, the fact that Jerry Jones referred to them not having enough cap space to keep Tyron Smith made me think that a Dak Prescott extension this year might not be so likely because if they were to extend Dak Prescott, they'd clear up a ton of cap space for this year. That would
yeah.
be close to 20 million in cap space they'd free up, which would have given them more than enough to go extend Tyron Smith and Jonathan Hankins. The fact that they had to let those guys walk, or at least in their mind, like we have to let these guys walk, we can't afford to keep them. That's very telling to me. That makes me think they don't expect to get an extension done with Dak Prescott. I mean, if they get one done with CD Lamb, that'll be about 10 million freed up in cap space. That's not necessarily enough to go pay a $20 million cap hit to Tyron Smith if he earns all his incentives. But the fact that Tyron Smith and Jonathan Hankins were too much, it tells me they really believe that there's not going to be an extension gotten with Dak Prescott. And
Mm,
that concerns me probably more than anything because as bad as he was in that Packers game, as bad as he's been in a lot of playoff games in his career, he's a great quarterback. Most teams in the NFL would kill to have what we have at quarterback right now. Obviously there's a few that wouldn't, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals. The Texans. There's a few teams out there that have maybe you could argue better at quarterback right now, but most of them they can't. And Dak was second place in MVP votes last year. Letting a guy like that walk is just not how you play winning football. And sadly, I think it's what's about to happen with the Cowboys. So
Well, I'm very sorry about that, Rob. It's truly tragic. It sounds like Derrick Henry leaving type situation that hopefully, the Cowboys end up going out and if that is what happens and Dak Prescott does walk, hopefully they surprise you with a bunch of signings like the Titans did this year. Um, but yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting if they don't extend Dak Prescott and what that's going to look like, especially for this upcoming year, um, as it could be Dak's last year in a Cowboys uniform. So, which could be very interesting to see. But maybe it's a obviously we have to wait for the season, but maybe it's a turning of a new leaf. Maybe they're going to give the reins to someone like Trey Lance, or maybe they're going to attempt to, maybe draft their young quarterback next draft. I don't know. But it's certainly going to be interesting. That's for sure.
I don't want to talk about the NFL anymore. Let's go back to the UFL. At least that's
Okay,
sad.
at least that's exciting. Yeah. So on more happier topics. So we're going to launch into our Gridiron Go Round segment, and we're going to be talking about the UFL. We're going to get off of the NFL so Rob doesn't end up being brokenhearted for the entire episode. So, Rob, here we go. Do you think the UFL will have a successfully uninterrupted season where a champion will be crowned at its conclusion?
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to happen. I mean, barring, some unforeseen tragedy like, coronavirus a few years ago or something like that, World War III breaking out, God forbid. you know, Fingers crossed. I feel like the UFL has as high a chance of success as any spring league football has had, in the past 20 years, because you're taking two really successful spring league, football organizations and merging them into one. Uh, Both of them, stood on their own 2 feet in their own right. Especially the USFL, I think a little bit more than the XFL because the USFL made money, whereas the XFL lost money last year. But regardless, these are brands that have excitement around them, teams that people were paying attention to. I think both leagues were averaging close to 1 million viewers per game they were streaming. So you take all that hype and all that excitement for both leagues and you combine it into one. You have some really great business minds. Daryl Johnston, the Moose, Cowboys legend, fullback, president of the USFL, and then obviously you have The Rock and Danny Garcia and their whole business team, whatever that firm is that owns most of the shares in the XFL, all working together now to create like a really good product. I'm just so excited. I absolutely think this league is not only going to last a full year, but it's going to last many years beyond this. Again, barring an apocalypse or something like that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think, you definitely hit the nail on the head. I think that this is only going to continue in an upward trend. I know that there was some worry about when the two leagues, the XFL and the USFL, joined together. But honestly, I think that the level of talent is going to be even so much better because of that they're condensing the leagues with the players onto these four teams. I think actually we're going to be seeing a spring league that's the most competitive than it's ever been in recent times. And so I think that is alone also going to set it apart from what the XFL has done in the past and what the USFL has done in the past. That level of play, I think, is going to mirror the NFL's level of play, even maybe not to the same like standard, but as a fan watching it, there's not going to be like I don't know. I feel like there's not going to be as many missed extra point field goals, or even though I know that's not even a part, but in the USFL in that first season, it was like, wow, is your kicker going to even make the kick? So I think that the level of competitiveness is going to go really high, and will only add to more people becoming interested in it, wanting to watch games, and I think it would only bring up the viewings, bring up the ratings, um, only good stuff ahead. So yeah, absolutely. I think that there will be not only one season, but many, many seasons.
That is a fantastic point. I don't think a lot of people are talking about. And there's going to be the best of the best for spring league football this year. All of the teams have the best players from both leagues, like you just said. So we're going to see a premium level of talent, all across the league this year. It's going to make things super competitive and super fun. I cannot agree more with what you just said. That's a great point. Okay, Carson. So next thing here, do you think the league owners will announce four additional teams for the 2025 season?
I don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility. I think for finance reasons, and to get it better off the ground, I think that we will probably see a couple seasons with just 8 teams total. But we've heard the people running the UFL that they are open to expansion. And I think that's really going to play off of the fact how well this season goes. Um, but absolutely, I don't. I would probably disagree with the 2025 season, but you look at 2026, maybe 2027, uh, when the league kind of has solidified itself in the spring and it has a repeat season that does just as well, if not better. I think that you could start to see expansions from the teams that already existed in the USFL and the XFL that they had to cut down. I think that they could start to reestablish those teams. And I think something that's super unique is, they may have people that would want to own or co-own or work with the UFL to have their own team. Just like the NFL, each team has its owner. And I think that we could start to evolve into that where you have maybe wealthy people, let's say in Las Vegas, in LA, in New York, that may want to be like, you know what, I really love football. I want to own a expansion UFL team. And then that could lead ways to not only more funding, but also a expansion into a new market, and of course, new fans, a maybe not new stadiums, but using stadiums that are already there to generate revenue and interest within their own pocket. Um, so yeah, absolutely, I can 100% see them expanding. I just don't know if it's going to be next year. I think they're going to need to solidify themselves for a little bit before they start to swing big and go bigger.
So I thought I heard this a couple days ago, and I just was looking it up to see how true it was. But apparently, the DC Defenders defensive coordinator Greg Williams said that they'll be adding four more teams next year, and then four more teams after that in
Really?
2006, in order to get to a 16 team league, which I
Yeah.
think perfect. I think that's a really good way to do it. Because, like you said, there's probably going to be a ton of interest in owning a UFL team. There's a lot of great markets that aren't being, utilized right now. New York, I don't know how, the biggest market in the entire world isn't being, utilized by the UFL. There's so many cities out there that could use a football team in the spring league. I feel like having a 16 team league would be really good because there's a lot of good players who are just on the street right now after the
Yeah.
roster. There's a lot of players left. Maybe it wouldn't have that factor where it's just like the best of the best the way it will be this year. But I feel like the more teams you have, the more exciting it can be because you never know what kind of talent you're going to discover when you go out there and you have to like sift through, a lot of these unknown players. I mean, you look at a guy like Brandon Aubrey, who is now an all-pro kicker for the Dallas Cowboys. He kind of started out as that like unknown quantity in the USFL where, he was just like a soccer player that wanted to play football. And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a chance. I think you have a much higher chance of stuff like that happening if you have more teams. And I think
Yeah.
it's stories like that that make spring league football so special. So I'm really excited to hear that, at least according to the defensive coordinator of the DC Defenders, which, who knows how much he's actually aware of like the greater plan or whatever. It sounds like expansion teams are certainly in the future of spring football. Um, I would love that. Maybe our Jersey Generals will come back to us. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? And absolutely, I think that, as you mentioned, it's such a great point, is with expansion, with more teams, uh, these players in college that may not be high draft prospects for the NFL that still want to continue on their careers in the UFL can absolutely do that. I mean, I even think of even like arena football, and I know it's different, but there's like over 20 some teams, maybe not now, but there was at one point. I know that there was, I think they still exist, but the Iowa Barnstormers, they were kind of like a big kind of arena football team. And there's a lot of those around. So even like there is players out there, there's people that want to do this, and providing those opportunities for the next Brandon Aubrey, the next Cavante Turpin, who also did super well in the USFL and then went to the Cowboys as well. Uh, you know, that could absolutely turn into a stepping stone, like we've been talking about, to the NFL, and getting these kind of um, unknown players kind of more traction in terms of, hey, this is a really good guy. Like he can really play this position well. So yeah, absolutely. All right, Rob.
Well,
So this one's going to be an interesting one, but uh, do you think that the Michigan Panthers from the USFL conference and the San Antonio Brahmas from the XFL conference, do you think that both the Panthers and the Brahmas combined will have a win total of 6 games this season or less?
I don't think they're going to have 6 total wins this year. I think you look at the worst teams in all the spring football leagues, as far back as you want to go. The two worst teams, which I think these two are going to be, have never hit 3 wins. They're always like at 1 or 2. And I think that's probably where these two teams are going to be this year, 1 or 2. I just think their talent level is just not a match for some of these other teams that they're going to be competing against. Granted, like we talked about, premium talent, best of the best for spring league football and all the teams. So maybe things will be a little closer than I'm expecting just because of that factor, because of how few teams there are right now. And maybe they'll surprise us and have like a 3 or 4 win season. But the way I see it right now, there is no way these two teams will combine for 6 wins this season.
Yeah, no, I also agree. There's not really those players that pop out on these rosters to me, um, or even like defensive or offensive sides of the ball. Of course, you have Trey Quinn on the Panthers, who's pretty good. But yeah, I think we've kind of seen this play out before in these past spring leagues. You look at the Pittsburgh Maulers, even the Houston Gamblers, the first season in the USFL, where they barely got to 2 wins. Even the XFL, you look at the Orlando Guardians or the Vegas Vipers, not very many wins. So I think 6 wins total for both of those teams combined is going to be really pushing it for them. And as you mentioned, Rob, I think that the talent overall in their respective conferences is so much greater than what they have to offer. So I think it's going to be a struggle for them to get to a combined win total of 6 games.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. Uh, oh, here we go, Carson. Here's one for both of us Generals fans. It's kind of painful to hear. Do you think the Birmingham Stallions will win the USFL conference, but not the UFL championship?
Oh, I think that's certainly a toss up. Um, I think I'm definitely going to go with yes. I think this is absolutely possible. Um, I think the Stallions are a great team, and I think they're definitely going to be battling it out with the Showboats when it comes to the USFL conference. As much as I would like to put my Roughnecks in there, I still have like that quarterback, one of the most important roles on the field. It's still a big question mark for me. So until I see that actually play out, just on paper, the Showboats and the Stallions have, I think, the best rosters in the USFL all around. And so, absolutely, I could 100% see Jamar Smith, playing up against Case Cookus like we saw them play in the first ever USFL championship game. Um, and we all saw how that ended up. Um, so absolutely, I think that they can win the USFL conference. Talking about the UFL championship and going up against the likes of the potential defenders or the Battlehawks or even the Renegades, that the week 1 matchup of both champions, that's going to be happening in Can't believe couple days. Yeah, I think that this is pretty accurate. I think they have what it takes to win their conference, but I think the championship is going to be a lot tougher for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it's even going to be particularly close inside their conference. I think they are far and away the best team in the USFL conference. No offense, Carson. No offense to your Roughnecks. But
I'd say
they just have a stacked roster, top to
they
bottom.
do.
I know they have some controversy at quarterback. It's going to be Matt Corral or Jamar Smith but this is the roster that won championships with 2 years in a row now. They kept pretty much all the main pieces there. They added, some other pieces. Taco Charlton, we'll talk about that a little later. Um, I just think they're going to clearly and easily win the USFL conference. The XFL conference on the other side, I think, is going to be much more competitive, not just inside the conference for who's going to win it, but against the Birmingham Stallions and the top of the USFL. Because, like you said, I just think there's better overall quality in the XFL conference right now. I think you have three teams that in the XFL conference could very seriously compete for a title, and the Renegades, the Battlehawks, and the Defenders. All three of them have a real shot, and I think all three of them are right up there with the Stallions in terms of how good they are. So I would be shocked if it worked out anyway. Besides this, to be honest, maybe the Stallions will take what I'm saying and what you're saying as extra motivation, come out and just destroy the Renegades first game of the season, go on and just beat everyone and win the championship. But I just don't see that happening. I think they will win the USFL conference pretty easily, but then I think they're going to get beaten in the championship game.
Yeah. So talking about, with what we were discussing in terms of league expansion and whatnot, of course, all that comes down to attendance at games. And we've already seen the St. Louis Battlehawks pack their facility almost to the brim last year with the XFL. Crazy numbers in terms of the attendance. Rob, do you think that this year, this upcoming season, the St. Louis Battlehawks will break every attendance record in any alternate football league?
I mean, absolutely. I'm not sure exactly how big their stadium is, if it's capable of holding that many people. I think it is.
I think
Um,
so.
I'm sure it is actually. Yeah, it's like one of the bigger stadiums in all of spring football. It's just the Battlehawks are not only, in my opinion, the best team in the league this year. They're also clearly the team that is most loved by like their hometown, because St. Louis really took it hard when the Rams moved back to Los Angeles. And to them, the Battlehawks are kind of filling that hole that the Rams left, filling that void with a football team that they can care about and be passionate about. So you have a city that is extremely devoted to this team in a league that I think is going to be receiving the most hype and attention that a spring football league has gotten possibly since the UFL of the 80s, where you had like all the superstars playing football there. So you just take like the most hyped league, the most hyped team, arguably the best team. I just don't see a universe where they're not selling out, their stadium at a capacity that's higher than any spring league football team has ever seen. I fully expect them to break that record this year. I'd be very surprised if they didn't.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think this is absolutely what could happen. As you mentioned, the whole Rams situation in St. Louis. I've been to St. Louis multiple times, and let me tell you, they are not happy with the Rams leaving. And so the Battlehawks coming in and filling this void, whether that was 2020 or last year or now this year, they love their team. And in St. Louis, call is law, and they will all rally and come out to those games. So you can bet your money on that. And there is no doubt in my mind why the UFL is going to have their championship game in St. Louis. It is going to be an absolutely great event. Whoever makes it, whether St. Louis makes it, I mean, I can only imagine if St. Louis makes it, St. Louis might burn down. It's going to be crazy. But yes, absolutely. Championship games in St. Louis, the Battlehawk fan base is shows up as they did last year. I think they will absolutely break every attendance record.
On the flip side of that token, going to the USFL conference now, do you think that the Birmingham Stallions will lead the USFL conference in attendance?
I think so. I think they will. I think them being solidified for 2 years in Birmingham, especially when the first kind of season of the USFL was all in Birmingham. All the games were played there. The city loved the league there. You know, you definitely saw the difference when the Stallions were playing with visitation in the stands versus when they weren't. And I think that has only grown, and not only because they've won two championships, but also because Birmingham doesn't have a football team, kind of like St. Louis. They and it's Alabama, you know, whose sports one of the best college football programs. As much as it hurts me to say that, it is just true. Uh, having a kind of a professional team in Alabama is something that they haven't really had before. Obviously, other than in the 1980s when the USFL was active. But in recent times, they love that team there. And Stallions fans, I think, in the USFL were some of the most devoted people, uh, driving up even to Canton to see the championship game this past season. So crazy stuff. I think over time, Houston, Memphis, and Michigan will have its crowds. But I think for the time being, the Stallions are just so solidified in the league as kind of favorites, as champions, as winners, that there's a lot more following based around that. And due to that, I think that their attendance will be probably higher this season than the likes of Houston, Memphis, or Michigan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For all the reasons you just said, Birmingham is going to kill it in attendance this year. They are the only football team in a professional league in that area where you have tons of football lovers because, obviously, Alabama Roll Tide football is just a huge thing down there. They've been 2-year champions in a row, so there's lots of hype around them. So not only do they have lots of fans in their own part of the country, but they also have lots of bandwagon fans in general. I mean, you and I personally both know people from like the northern part of the United States who are just absolutely devoted Birmingham Stallions fans. So I think they built up quite a fan base, not only with just being in Alabama, but all that winning they've been doing. As painful as that is to say over the past 2 years. So just because of all those reasons, I think they're absolutely going to kill it in attendance this year.
Yeah. And we did mention about the Birmingham Stallions winning the USFL conference. We think that's definitely plausible and possible. Um, let's go flip over to the XFL conference. Rob, do you think the St. Louis Battlehawks are the best team, as you mentioned? Do you think they're going to be winning the XFL conference this year?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, they won. I think they had like the highest seed in the XFL last year, and there was it like the North or whatever,
Yeah,
um,
I think so.
or
Yeah, the
North or
North.
whichever conference they were in last year in the XFL. I'm pretty sure they were the number one seed in it,
Yeah.
and I think they're absolutely going to kill it in the regular season again. I think they're going to win the most games in the regular season. Does that mean they'll necessarily win the championship? Who knows? They didn't win it last year. The Renegades managed to beat them in the playoffs. Or I don't know if they actually beat them directly, but the Renegades went on to win it all after,
Yeah.
having really bad record in the regular season. And the Battlehawks did not. So the playoffs are kind of like a different animal, but at least in terms of the regular season, I absolutely expect the Battlehawks to go out there and, win the day, win lots of games and win the division for sure.
Yeah. I actually think I'm pretty sure actually I think DC had the top seed in the North and they played St. Louis in
Or
that conference
yeah,
game.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who did the
Okay.
Renegades who did they upset the um
Right. Was it the Roughnecks?
it was the Roughnecks. That's right. It was. I can't believe that I blanked on that. Yeah. It was. They beat yeah, that was it. And then it was the Renegades
You're right.
uh, versus DC. But still, yes, I think I agree. I think St. Louis uh, is probably the front runner to win the XFL conference. Tragic news with Abram Smith going down, season-ending injury. I believe it was an ACL tear. That's really tragic for them. I know that they've signed people to replace him, and that Reggie Barlow, their coach, is very high on some of these newer guys that they brought in. So that being the case, I think DC probably won't be skipping a beat when it comes to their level of play, but still losing Abram Smith is going to be big for them. We'll see how big it is when the season comes around. But absolutely, I could see the St. Louis Battlehawks winning the XFL conference.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty much a guarantee at this point. Well, maybe not a guarantee, but like that, if that was something I was going to bet on, Battlehawks would definitely be my number one choice.
Yeah.
How about this one, Carson? Do you think Case Cookus will win the league's MVP award this year?
I think it's definitely possible. I think it's definitely possible. I wouldn't put money on it. I'll say that. I wouldn't put money on it, but I do think that Case Cookus is going to have a really good year. Um, Last year that he played with the Stars, obviously that team was plagued with injury, and I think he even suffered an injury too last season. I'm not 100% on that, but last year wasn't as good for him in regards to what he was able to do. Um, Kind of that is based around the team that was around him too. It just wasn't that great of a team that it was 2 years ago when he led the Stars to um, the championship game in a close battle with the Stallions, even though they lost. I think Case Cook is going to walk onto the field for the Showboats, and he's going to absolutely ball out because he has weapons around him, whether that's Darius Victor from the New Jersey Generals at running back. I'm sure some of those wide receivers will start to work out, even though, when we did do that, our review of them, we kind of were not too high on them. So I think Case Cookus has a team that's kind of better around him. So I think he will only thrive. Um, I think he's going to be the face of the league in regards to the quarterbacks. I think, not the face, but one of the faces of the league. I think you're going to have AJ McCarron, Case Cookus, Jamar Smith, Jordan Tamu, Luis Perez. Like those are the guys that I see. Like with if there's any like banner of quarterbacks that are kind of like the faces of spring football in terms of the quarterback position, those are the five guys I think of. And so if those five guys are running for the league's MVP award this year, and obviously with the NFL, a lot of times quarterbacks do end up getting the MVP award. So if that works for the same kind of reasons in the spring league with the UFL, I think Case Cookus could absolutely have a baller season and end up winning. We'll obviously have to see how the Showboats do. And obviously, I hope that they don't win week one when the Roughnecks play them this upcoming weekend. But we will all be watching to see how he does moving forward.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to be MVP this season. I don't think he'll even be second, to be honest. I think you're going to see AJ McCarron dominate the MVP voting
Yeah.
because I think the Battlehawks are going to destroy everyone in their path, at least in the regular season, with how loaded that team is right now. I think you might see one of the other more mobile quarterbacks lead like the second place votes. Whether that's Tamu with the defenders or someone like that. Just someone who does it all for their team instead of just being a less mobile quarterback like Case Cookus is. I think he might be third. I think he'd have a good shot at that, but I just do not expect him in any capacity to be leading the MVP vote this year. So my money would again be on AJ McCarron just because I'm a big believer in the Battlehawks, just being amazing all around this year. So
Yeah. Well, Rob, you know how I feel about this. I briefly mentioned it before, but I want to hear your take on it. Do you think that the Houston Roughnecks will have the number one ranked defense and will lead the league in quarterback sacks this UFL season?
So I was thinking about this, and I think there might be a few teams in the XFL conference that I think have more talent on their defense,
Mm,
even if it's close. But I
mhm.
believe that the Roughnecks will still have the number one overall rated defense because they're playing inferior competition. The offenses they're going up against outside of Birmingham are not really all that electric. I feel like that means they'll probably give up less yards and less points and just have better overall defensive numbers even if I think like let's say the DC Defenders or the Arlington Renegades have a more overall well-rounded defense. I do think their pass rush is going to be absolutely fearsome. They added Reuben Foster, right, who
Yep.
I know is a great middle linebacker who can also kind of rush the passer. They just have a lot of good guys on that defensive line, and I think they're going to bring a lot of pressure. I don't know if they'll lead in sacks, but I fully expect them to probably have the number one overall ranked defense in terms of yards and points and all that sort of stuff, just because they have an elite defense like a few other teams do, but they're the ones that are playing the weaker competition. So I think you got to give them the edge in that category.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely going to be super fun to watch defensively. I'm really excited to see Reuben Foster out there. But the guy I'm actually really probably more excited to see is Chris Odom. And I know for the Gamblers, his first season, he completely balled out, and then ended up getting an NFL contract, I believe, with the Browns. I'm pretty sure it was the Browns.
It was, yes.
Um, and so he didn't play in the last USFL season. So it's going to be super cool to see him back within the kind of spring league where he did dominate. But he's the type of player like a Cavante Turpin and Brandon Aubrey, where NFL teams saw what he could do on the field in a UFL, or well, it was the USFL, but now will be the UFL, and was like, you know what, that is special talent, and we need him on our roster. And although he never really, I don't think he was in many starts. I don't think he started any games. I think he was just a practice squad guy. Um, but still having that kind of talent on the defense could be very electric. So I'm super excited and super stoked to have Chris Odom on that line, um, and just to see what he can do to the offensive lines of these teams. I will agree, though. I do think that, yeah, going up against the Panthers and the Showboats, it might be a little bit easier for the Roughnecks in relation to the Defenders and Renegades and Battlehawks. But I do think that this defense can certainly give any team a run for their money, and I would caution teams to count them out, um, because I think that they can be sneakily good on defense. Offensively, we'll just have to see. But yeah, if you're not careful, I think these guys can hit you where it hurts, and they have shown in well, not preseason, past seasons of spring football that they can absolutely ball out on their respective teams.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the Roughnecks are going to be absolutely dominant on the defensive side of the ball this year for sure. All right. So we've talked a lot about the UFL, but I have one more for you, Carson, and it's related
Yeah.
to the NFL. There was some drama surrounding San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk today, where the 49ers general manager was talking about how he wanted to extend Ayuk and keep him in San Francisco, said he didn't want to trade him. And then Brandon Ayuk went on his Instagram page where he put up a message featuring several emojis that basically translated to the message saying, if you're gonna BS me, I'm gonna walk and go get more money somewhere else.
Mm.
So, what do you think? Do you think Brendan Ayuk will be playing on a different team next year? You think he's gonna get traded?
I think it would be a big mistake to let the 49ers lose Brandon Ayuk. I think that Brandon Ayuk fills a role on this 49ers offense that complements Debo Samuel, that complements Christian McCaffrey, that is very key to Brock Purdy's growth and success, and having an option like him to throw the ball to. Uh, I think the 49ers have to definitely be careful when it comes to Brandon Ayuk, because I think he can absolutely be traded this season if he is unhappy with where he's at in San Francisco. If he's unhappy with how things are run, um, that could be another top level wide receiver going to a different team. Um, I just really think the 49ers should really think this one through, because losing Brandon Ayuk is a big weapon for you guys, and it could lead to your uh, potential downfall this year in running and then letting realistically the Rams run away with the division.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think losing Ayuk would be a huge part of their offense. They'd just be walking out the door. In my opinion, he was a top five wide receiver last year. I think most people would agree with that. I think pretty much every advanced metric would say that. So letting him get away from you would be a huge mistake because unless you get something like massive in return for him, um, a draft pick isn't going to cut it today. Because when you have that first round pick, what you're hoping for is you get a guy like Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
So why would you trade him for a chance at getting a guy that's hopefully as good as he is? I know it's a cheaper player, but at the end of the day, that's not going to help you win Super Bowls.
Yep.
Having a guy on your team is what's going to help you win Super Bowls. At the same time, if he's unhappy with the 49ers and they can't afford to give him the money that he wants, there's nothing worse on your locker room than having a player there who doesn't want to be there. So I feel like if that's the situation they're in where he's unhappy with what they're offering and they really can't afford to offer him more, um, maybe they have to trade him. I think that would be a really terrible way to manage their team. I think they should find a way to give Ayuk whatever it is he wants because I feel like he's a huge part of that offense, like you said. And if he goes away, I don't think they'll be anywhere near as productive as they were this past year. And that could really open the door for the Rams to kind of creep up and become that new NFC West champion, like we talked about last week.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and whatever team gets him, I think that'll be really exciting to see. I know some of the names floated out there, the Giants as a possibility. The Patriots were reported to be interested. The Steelers, who don't really have anyone besides George Pickens playing that wide receiver spot right now. Although I saw Van Jefferson sign there, but they don't have a real dynamic number two threat. Um, Even the Titans I saw were in play, although that was before they signed Ridley. So I don't know how much that changes the equation because, that's going to be another huge wide receiver contract they'd have to hand out.
Yep.
Um, at least 100 million, just like Ridley. So
Yep.
probably not as tenable now. I saw one that was really fun. Honestly, my favorite was the Bears.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, because they have two first round picks, right? So what if they take that number 8 or 7 or whatever it is overall pick and they flip it for Ayuk? I know maybe it would make more sense just to stay there and take Rome Odunze, but Ayuk is a proven commodity. He's in his prime. He's only 25 or 26, right? Why not go out there and get a guy like that? Put him with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Form the best wide receiver trio in the league for Caleb Williams when you get him on your team. All for the cost of like an auxiliary first round pick, something you were just going to use to build around Caleb anyways, probably at that position at wide receiver.
yeah.
I don't know if they have the cap space to go pay Brandon Ayuk whatever contract it is he wants. But I think I would rather have Brandon Ayuk right now than take a chance on a guy like Romo Dunze. Maybe you wait till after the draft and see if a guy like Malik Neighbors somehow falls to your pick. I doubt that. But who knows what could happen with Ayuk? It'd be really exciting if he moves. It would make me happy watching the Niners get worse. Hopefully he doesn't go to another team I don't like the Packers or the Eagles, because that would just be terrifying. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It'll be a lot of fun to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah. I hope the 49ers are smart. That's for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our Redzone Rodeo Rowdy rankings. And this week, since the UFL will be starting up in just a couple days this upcoming weekend, we are going to be providing you with our pre-week one power rankings for the UFL. So without further ado, Rob, uh, our Redzone Rodeo pre-week one power rankings for the UFL. Who do we have at number one?
Well, at number one, we kind of mentioned this before. We both talked about how we think this is right now the best team in the league. It is the St. Louis Battlehawks. It's just really clear that they have talent, at every position, especially at wide receiver and quarterback, which, is probably two of the most, well, definitely the two most important positions in the league right now. They're going to be able to throw the ball all over. They have good supporting guys on offensive line and at running back and on defense. I would be shocked, if they weren't the highest win total team in the league this year with all the guys they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. At number two, we have the Birmingham Stallions. And we kind of already mentioned this earlier in the show as well, but this is another team that has won back-to-back USFL champions. And they have built a winning culture in Birmingham. A lot of their players are returning. Their head coach and coaching remains consistent. This is a team to definitely watch out for, especially in the USFL conference. This is a team that has every reason to be even in the championship game. We'll certainly see how the season plays out. But for our pre-week one power rankings, we have the Stallions at number two.
Yeah, at number three, we got my favorite team, the Arlington Renegades. They went out there and won the championship in the XFL last year, showing that they have what it takes to go out there and win a championship. They've added some pieces. They added Lindsey Scott, the quarterback. They added some talent at wide receiver. They added some help on defense. The roster, it's not that much different outside of the addition of Lindsey Scott. But like I said, they've added a few pieces here and there to kind of patch up some of the holes they had last year. Really, I think the big difference for the Renegades this year as opposed to last year is that Luis Perez is going to be on the team for the full season instead of being traded for like halfway through the year. So that's going to be a full season of championship pedigree at the most important position on the entire team. And I think you'll see them have a much better record this year, be much more competitive for the entire season than they were most of last year. And I think for the most part, they'll look like a championship team this year, like they didn't really so much last year.
At number 4, we have the DC Defenders. Um, we did mention that Abram Smith, unfortunately, will be missing the entire season with an ACL tear. Huge loss for the DC Defenders. But, that is just one position at running back. And Reggie Barlow, their head coach, is very high on some of the guys that they have added to the roster to replace him. Other than really Abram Smith, the DC Defenders still have a powerhouse of an offense led by Jordan Tamu, who will be returning. These guys are going to be scary good on offense, and they also have a really good defense as well. There was a reason they were number one in the XFL in terms of going into the playoffs, being that number one seed for their division. And I absolutely expect them to be a menace in this upcoming season for the UFL.
Yeah, I just want to say I think any of those four teams at the top of the rankings have a chance to win it all this year for sure. So it'll be exciting to watch.
Yeah.
At number 5, we have the Memphis Showboats, and they are quarterbacked by the guy we were just talking about a few segments ago, Case Cookis, as potentially being an MVP candidate. There are some holes on their roster, like we talked about. Their wide receiver room isn't necessarily the greatest. The defense doesn't necessarily have like the best pieces or whatever. But when you have a quarterback who's top 3 in the league, like Case Cookis, you're in contention in every game because he's a guy who can go out there and make the play to win the game when it matters. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Showboats, at number 2 in the USFL division this year, and have a real chance in the playoffs against the Stallions for USFL division winner. So yeah, number 5, we got the Showboats.
Yeah, and also quick add to Darius Victor in that rushing game. We saw what he was able to do for the New Jersey Generals for back-to-back seasons in the USFL. That guy is scary good at the running game, hard to tackle, thick thighs, save lives as his catchphrase. But this Showboats offense, if it might not be getting great with the air game in terms of passing, the run game is also going to be pretty strong. So get ready to see that as well. At number 6, we have my boys, the Houston Roughnecks. I kind of talked about this earlier in the show. I think that they have some really great components to their roster. I think their defense could easily be number one in the league. And I think it's certainly going to help them win a couple games this year. Uh, Not to sound like a one-trick pony, but the thing that I just am still worried about is the quarterback position. And the quarterback position for the Houston Roughnecks is still a big question mark for me. And until whoever it is can go out and prove themselves to be that quarterback that can keep up with the Case Cookis, the AJ McCarrons, the Luis Perez, of the league, unfortunately, I think that they lack in that position, and as a result, that could lead to mismanaged plays in terms of the passing game, even though we sport a really good wide receiver room. So at number 6, we have the Houston Roughnecks. I hope that they will go up in our power rankings as we go throughout the season. But as we're sitting with the pre-week 1 power rankings, they are going to be our number 6.
Yeah, they're certainly one of the teams I think has the potential to move up this list based off of how good their defense is probably going to be. Um, the next two teams I don't think really have a lot of potential to move up the list this year. Number 7, we have the Michigan Panthers. I mean, I know we talked about, was it Trey Quinn before? They have, that's like the one guy they have to hang their hat on. Outside of that, you look at the roster, there's not really a ton of talent to talk about. There's not really a lot to get you excited. I just don't think they're going to win a lot of games this year. They have an incomplete team. They don't really have playmakers at the most important positions outside of Trey Quinn at wide receiver. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I expect them to have 1, maybe 2 wins this year at the most.
And likewise with our number 8 spot, we have the final team, the San Antonio Brahmas, who just announced that their starting quarterback is going to be Chase Garbers, I believe, is how you pronounce his name. But this is also a team like the Panthers. I think they have a lot of holes. Of course, they have talent. any of these teams have talent. But looking at the pre-week one power rankings on paper, there's just nothing really to get excited about the team that really struggled last year as well. So obviously they have everything in their power to only go up from here. But as we see it right now, the Brahmas are going to be sitting in our last spot at number 8.
Yeah. Well, talking about things that are not good, now it is time for honestly one of my absolute favorite parts of the show, the Redzone Rodeo Clowns of the Week. Uh, so I don't know if you guys saw, but today the NFL released a few new rules for next year. They were, I think, some of them were controversial. I think they banned the hip drop tackle. That was getting a
Yep.
lot of buzz on social media as possibly something that was a little controversial. But then there were a few others that were really smart. One, they added, I think, a third challenge for teams if we get one of their first two correct. And then the next one was they added replays for certain penalties. I think it's for roughing the passer and for intentional grounding. So essentially, what can happen now is the NFL can review these replays or these plays when they happen, these penalties, and if there is something objectively incorrect about the call, they can overturn that. Now, that's a brilliant idea. I think, it's really smart and it's great that they're doing it. But why did it take so long? NFL, you are a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week for taking way, way too long to implement replays of penalties like, roughing the passer or intentional grounding, where things can just be objectively gotten wrong by the referees. I understand the referees are human, they make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes, but you have the tools to fix it. Why did it take you 20 years to use those tools to fix it in the first place? Come on, I'm glad you're doing it now, but this should have happened a lot sooner. For that reason, entire NFL, you are a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week.
Absolutely. And just to kind of go on about that, the NFL waited so long that the contingent of people that think games are fixed or thinks games are just already predestined to happen has grown so much that now you're adding this rule and you have to be careful. You have to be careful because there's already so many people out there that already think that, oh, it's all rigged. They wanted Taylor Swift to win the Super Bowl, all of this stuff, like all the calls are, that you better get it down to a strict science on how you're going to take back these calls and whatnot. Because I could absolutely see people having an issue with this because, you know, with roughing the passer and grounding now being reviewable, people I should say those calls that used to slide now are going to be called. And so I think that there could even be like this not uprising, but this just disgust for this now from fans that, they could maybe have gotten away with it a couple of times. Well, now it's going to be called every time. Or at least close to every time. And so still, I still want to caution the NFL, like, what are you thinking, first of all, by taking so long to implement something like this, where, there has been bad calls, and unfortunately, bad calls have decided games, and we talk about that even last season. People are still talking about, I have a Colts fan a friend who's a Colts fan who is still complaining about the bad calls at the end of the Colts Browns game and how that cost him a chance to go to the postseason, which I mean, at the end of the day, I pretty much told him you weren't going to get anywhere anyways, but still the fact of the matter is people are still upset over bad calls. And hopefully this is going in the right direction now. But why did it take you so long? Because now you kind of created a space where these conspiracy theorists of it being completely rigged are now running rampant. And I just hope that, of course, now it seems like it's going in the right direction, but you better get your ducks in the line, NFL, because it could get real ugly real quick if you're not careful with what's been brewing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just embarrassing, honestly, that it took them so long to do this. Another Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week. This one's in the UFL, Birmingham Stallions. I know, we just talked about how great they are, how they have a chance to win it all this year. But one of the players that they signed just this past week was former Cowboys defensive end Taco Charlton. Now, I remember when Taco Charlton was first drafted, this was the year after Dak Prescott's rookie year, and the Cowboys offense looked amazing and the defense was kind of suspect, and we just needed to fix that up. And Taco Charlton was the answer. He was the guy that was going to turn our defense around. Jerry Jones called him our War Daddy. That was the nickname he had for him, our War Daddy,
Wow.
War Daddy Taco. So, the Cowboys fans were so excited to get this guy. Um, they were a little less excited, when they realized that that meant they had to pass up on drafting TJ Watt. I heard he was pretty successful at some point, maybe just a little bit. So Taco Charlton, on the Cowboys, does absolutely nothing. Gets cut by the Cowboys within a few years, even though he was a first round draft pick. I think he played with the Chiefs, he played with a few other teams. He didn't stick with any of them because he's just not good at football. Total failure at the NFL level as of right now. Just never did a good job. And now he's with the Stallions. Stallions, what are you doing? Why are you signing this guy? He everywhere he's gone, he has failed. He is not good. And it's not a thing, right? This is like an effort issue. He just doesn't try. Why would you want a guy like that on your defensive line? Why would you do that? Is it because he was drafted in the first round by an NFL team? So was Johnny Manziel. So there are so many NFL players who were drafted in the first round of the NFL that don't even belong on a UFL team. Why are you giving this guy another chance? He's had 7 years to turn things around and he hasn't done it. Birmingham Stallions, you are Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week.
And you brought up Johnny Manziel, and there's been even some things linked to him even coming back because he even said something like, "Oh, well, my football career is not over yet." And so could we see Johnny Manziel in the UFL? It's possible.
I
If
would
Taco
love
Charlton is in the UFL, Johnny Manziel could absolutely come in. Maybe that's the guy. Maybe that's the guy Houston's going to get. They're going to be like, these three guys are done. We need to bring in Johnny Manziel. Let's get him in the building. Man, what a season that would be. I couldn't wait.
the revival of Johnny Football is something I desperately hope happens for your team, Carson. I think
I
that
know.
would be so much fun to watch.
It would. It would definitely not show up on a Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week in a future segment.
No, no,
No.
that is what we want. Johnny
Yes.
Manziel on the Roughnecks.
Yep.
You could go buy a Manziel Roughnecks jersey right now.
Just create it. Create it. I'll just start spamming the discussion boards for the Roughnecks. We want Johnny. We want Johnny football. That's certainly going to go well.
Oh yeah, that will really win you a lot of followers, I'm sure. Um, this last Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week is deeply personal to me. It hurts me a lot to say this, but actually, just before we started recording, Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy did an interview with ESPN's Adam Schefter where he was talking about the Cowboys offseason so far. And Adam Schefter said, well, you guys kind of messed up big time in free agency. Why did you do that? Like, why didn't you try to make your team better? And Mike McCarthy said, we have gotten better because we have a lot of young players that we really believe in. And they're going to be, filling all these holes that we have, and no one sees it coming, but I see it coming, and Jerry sees it coming, and it's going to be so good this year. And oh my goodness, did it remind me of the Jason Garrett years where the mantra of the Dallas Cowboys was just, we like our guys. That was basically what he said. We like our guys. We don't need anyone else. We like the guys that we have right now. Mike McCarthy, I love you. You have been a great addition to the Cowboys. You've helped led us to 3 consecutive 12-win seasons, and that's been awesome. But for saying that you think the Cowboys have gotten better over the past week or so, that since free agency started, you are a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week. Dude, you are so far off base, man. You're not even in the baseball park right now. Oh my.
Well, it's just funny because it's like, you can't, every team, including the Chiefs, and they just won the Super Bowl, has room for improvement. There is never going to be a perfect football team. There's always going to be room for improvement. There's always going to be holes that you need to fix. And just kind of going out and saying that, like we don't have any of those when clearly like you do. Um, you know, this is a league where you get rewarded for being aggressive more times than not and going out and grabbing the guys that you think will make a difference. Because if you just sit back and don't, you never will. You never will grab anybody. And of course, there's always that, you know, uh, percentage of players who may not work out. You may sign someone to a big deal and they don't end up filling the hole that you needed them to. But if you don't go out and try, then you're just going to be with what the constant is, if it not getting worse. So it's just, yeah, it's really crazy to me that he thinks that that is the way. That just, you know what, we don't need to do it because we already have good talent, and the Cowboys do have good talent. That's. I'm not saying they don't. They certainly have playmakers. Um, but as I mentioned, no team's perfect, and there's room for improvement for everybody. If your team was good with the players they had, they wouldn't have gone down to Green Bay by multiple touchdown scores in the first half. So, there's obviously some issues and some problems that need to be worked out. So yeah, absolutely. Mike McCarthy, what are you thinking? Were you forced to say this? Did Jerry Jones force you to say that, yo, we love our guys. This is our guy. But regardless, you are our Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week. Every team needs improvement. Improving is what drives teams forward. So don't know what you're thinking while saying we don't need that.
Yeah, no, it's bad because not only do we need to improve, but we got worse. We got substantially worse than we were in that playoff game against the Packers. We lost an all-pro left tackle. We lost an all-pro run, well, not an all-pro, but a Pro Bowl level running back. We lost an all-pro corner in Stephon Gilmore. We have lost so much, and you haven't done anything to replace it.
Yeah.
Come on, what are you doing?
What?
You
What are you doing?
what are you? Why am I a Cowboys fan? Oh, so
I bet
painful.
you
It's
revisit that
so
every day.
every night I question myself. I love them too much to ever abandon them, but God, is it painful.
All righty, guys. Well, we had a lot of fun this evening. We hope that you all also enjoyed yourselves listening in and tuning in. If you guys have any comments, suggestions on topics to cover in the near future or whatnot in regards to our rowdy rankings, let us know in the comment section below. If you guys aren't subscribed, please think about doing so and liking this video. All of the support helps. And before we sign off, as we've been mentioning this whole episode, and we hope you guys are as stoked as we are. Week 1 of the UFL is around the corner, and something I just thought I'd do just in case you may not be in the loop. There's 2 games going to be going on each weekend day. So there's going to be 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. The first game is going to be the rematch of both champions, as we've been talking, the Birmingham Stallions versus the Arlington Renegades. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. And then later in the afternoon at 4 p.m., the Battlehawks will be taking on the Panthers at Ford Field in Detroit. That will also be on Fox. So both Saturday games are going to be on Fox, 1 and 4 Eastern time. And then on Sunday, Easter Sunday, at noon Eastern time, the Defenders will take on the Brahmas, and that will be on ESPN. And then finally, for the final game of the week 1 schedule, the Showboats will be playing my boys, the Houston Roughnecks, at 3 p.m. Eastern time. That will also be on ESPN. So both games on Saturday on Fox, both games on Sunday on ESPN. We hope you guys tune in. And of course, next week when we record our next episode, we will be talking about these games, how we think they went, bringing you great football content, and of course, stuff from the NFL, as that is never ending. Free agency, leading up to the draft, you name it. We're going to be, we'll be talking about it. So is there anything else, Rob, before we sign off for the evening?
No, I think you covered it all. Just enjoy those UFL games this weekend, and make sure you come back next week to hear us react to all of them, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun stuff to say.
Absolutely. It's going to be an exciting time. Well, we love all the time we can get with you guys, and we hope you guys do the same. And have a great week. We will see you guys all next week. Thanks for your support again. And until next time, we will see you on the next episode. All right, guys. See ya.